I left college and I'd finished psychology. It then led to that interest of not just mental, physical sort of things. It was more like a deeper level. The more you think about something and set your heart on something or set your mind on something, the more you'll be drawn towards that particular thing. When you train physically, you can see things changing. Your muscles get bigger, there's that hypertrophy, or you get stronger, you're lifting more. The difference with your mindset is that unless you just feel a little bit more positive, you can't actually show people or prove to people. I have trained my mind a little bit. My mind is developing, because you can just say that and someone would have to believe you. As long as you're always thinking right and feeling right, you're always going to get where you end up in terms of your training. Whereas if your mindset's not quite there and your training is, I don't think you're going to excel any more than your mind does. Do you know what I mean? It comes in two. You can't just train hard and not focus on yourself mentally, and at the same time you can't just 100% focus on yourself mentally and not train hard. It sort of comes part and parcel, so that's why it's important. My name is Danny, I'm 25, I'm a plumber from Southampton. I've lived here all my life, I've grown up here, born here, and I also do free running and tons of sports. My mum and dad, or anyone in my family for that matter, haven't been role models in sports whatsoever. No one in our family is sporty. But they have, through their own little ways, pushed me towards that direction without meaning to push me towards that direction, if that makes sense. But the person that probably has influenced me most would be my dad. Just his adaptability from situations, his just too many things. He's probably been through one of the roughest times of anybody that I've had to spend a lot of time with. Obviously I've spent my whole life with my dad, and the whole time he's just, do you know what I mean, he's smiled in the face of adversity. He's still woke up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, he's still gone to work, he's still come back and put up with the stuff he used to put up with, and he's just been an absolute trooper. So to sit and watch that, when you could be in another situation, in another world, I could be in that exact situation with a dad that's taking his anger out on the world and just drowning himself in alcohol, and I've just had a dad that's got up, worked, put a roof over his kid's head and put food on the table. So yeah, my dad's the biggest influence. I'm working as a plumber because it was a good chance to get away from all of the things that I've trained to do, or the things that I've worked in, and actually learn a trade. So, I mean, like, the soldering part of it is weirdly therapeutic, simply because you get to take nothing to something, and it's all your own creation. Just kind of admire your artwork. You can literally get a big ton of pipe work that just needs soldering, and by the time you've finished it, you think, that's my creation. Do you know what I mean? I did that. There's a story with one of my ex-girlfriends, I'm not going to name or drop her in it, but basically her car broke down and her dad came all the way out to come and see what's wrong with the car. And it was something ever so simple. It was something like a belt, a converter belt or something, and he turned around to me and said, do you not know how to do that? For fuck's sake, I've come all the way out here for this. Sort of just slipped the belt back on, shut it, and we sort of drove on our way. And it was from that point I actually felt quite embarrassed. I thought, I'm quite handy at little things. I'm good with my knowledge of sort of personal training and things like that, but when it came to practical things, like hands-on things, it's just useless. And my dad, again, it goes back to that. My dad is a handy guy. My dad does chippy work, he does spark work. He's just an old-fashioned sort of handy guy. And plumbing, for me, the reason why I dived into plumbing was because I needed to be a handy guy, and it was just one of those situations. It popped up, there was an opportunity. I was just under the age bracket to get on an apprenticeship, and I thought, you know what, I could see myself doing that, learn a trade and become a little bit of what my dad kind of is, because again, my dad's one of my biggest influences, and if I can be a little bit handy or a little bit more like him, then 100%. Here he is. Himself.
Right, darling? I don't plunge toilets. It's kind of like a stereotypical thing to say that plumbers just plunge toilets. I mean, I've never done it ever, but if someone was to plunge a toilet, unfortunately it would be us plumbers. But I think my work has always been focused more on something called like a first fix. So we'll get like the carcass of a house when there's nothing in there, there's no water, there's no gas, nothing, and we'll sort of build it from scratch. And you sort of have to use your brain a little bit and think where everything's going to go, where's the bath going to go, where's the shower going to go. Do you know what I mean? If they got an ensuite in this room, and you sort of work your way from the bottom upwards or from the top downwards, completely up to you.
So sport has had a massive impact on me. The first time I went to a football game with my dad, it was sat in the away stand, F this, F that, F the ref. And it was just, on the whole, just a completely different experience. When he took me to my first rugby match, however, I remember even things like the weather, it was just freezing cold. It's usually just that situation where you really just don't want to be there, but the vibe was completely different. I mean, sat in the away stand still, we had somebody share their hot pie with us, share their beer with my dad. It was just more friendly, it was more welcoming. And then the sport itself as well, it's probably the first time I'd seen people take really big hits. I mean, they take some hits in football and they tumble over and roll around, but in rugby, I mean, these were some shocking hits. And they were just getting back up, they were shaking hands, and the whole game just had this gentleman vibe. I mean, everybody got along, everybody had that sportsmanship, that respect, and to me that changed my outlook on everything, 100%. So sports had a massive impact on me. 100% there will always be a connection from my job to my sport, whether that's sort of that dedication to wake up every morning, that resilience through a day when you're feeling a little bit too tired and you think, should I really be here, applies to sort of both aspects. So it's not just the timekeeping, it's not just that resilience going through that mental fatigue, just absolutely everything as well. So you get into them situations. Again, the good thing about plumbing or personal training for that matter, is the fact that there's always going to be obstacles that you get to and you think, I haven't dealt with this before. Do you know what I mean? Whether it's in personal training, you're training somebody with arthritis or osteopenia, or you go into plumbing and think, oh, we got a gas leak. I haven't done anything with gas. So there's always that challenge. There's always that sort of that switch up that wakes you up again and thinks, you know what I mean? Think. You have to think if you don't know, and that's the good thing with my training as well, is there's always going to be things that I chuck myself in that I'm not so good at, and I can't just half-heart it. I have to 100% commit to it, and then it makes me think. I have to think. So yeah, there's always a connection between my work and my training. Most sports out there genuinely will teach you discipline. They'll teach you resilience, so regardless of the situation you're in, they'll teach you persistence. They'll just teach you all of the things in life that you need to learn, and you'll be able to apply that more to life than anything else, I think. The three most important things in life for me. That's a big question. Anything that I'm rubbish at usually is my favourite thing to do, if I'm honest. Usually because simply if I'm good at something, then it's not, I no longer enjoy it, but I'd say there's no longer that push or that drive to try and do things you can't do. So yeah, it's probably the most realist thing that there is that lets you know that you're alive without sounding cheesy, especially the fails. In free running, falling over, landing on your head, sort of like a a big wake up. Again, playing a rugby match, there's so much you can do. Even if you're the most talented guy in the world, you're still going to receive a big hit that sort of wakes you up and thinks, do you know what I mean? If you can't get any more alive than that, then yeah, sport will cover anything from dance, skateboarding. It's just in our nature to be creative. It's in our nature to express ourselves, and a life without sport would be very dire and bland. I, at heart, am a big thinker anyway, so not many people would probably know this. Or they might know this, I have no idea. But at the same time, I think it used to be one of my biggest sort of detriments to my personality. It used to make me quite negative, quite down. But then I sort of had a stoic way of looking on things, and used all of that overthinking to sort of be the momentum or be that push behind everything that I'm doing, do you know what I mean? So if I'm feeling low, then that's a good reason to get up and go play sports, do you know what I mean? If I'm feeling incapable because my injury or anything like that, or injuries in the past, that's a good reason to. Last time I broke my leg, I got straight on my arms and tried to learn handstands. I didn't know how to handstand, so just little things like that, just trying to see that those little stoic ways of looking at things. I mean, that's the main influence behind the things that I'm thinking, is just the things that I'm feeling and the things that I'm experiencing at that moment in time. So
sport has changed me, but who was I before sport? Who is anybody? Who are you? Like, who are we? That's the one thing we're always trying to find out. I mean, it doesn't matter what successes I've had or what progression I've made. I think we're always secretly trying to find out who we are, always trying to discover ourselves a little bit more within things, sport particularly, because it's something that you can always grow in. We're never fully content and think, I'm perfect. I'm happy with who I am, I know who I am. We don't know who we are. It's all these questions you're asking yourself is all part of you asking yourself, who am I? What do I want to do? When I normally go to the gym, I just don't really plan anything. It's just all about what I'm feeling. If my legs are too achy, then my arms need to do something. If my arms are too achy, my back needs to do something, and I kind of just get in and express myself. Just always messing around with that element of power. Unless it's recovering from like an injury or something, I never really focused on those isolated movements, just because it goes back to nature. It's more natural. It goes back to your primal. You're pushing, you're pulling, you're running, you're jumping. It's just more me. I'm always looking for new ways to adapt, and it's never ever an issue when I'm training on my own, because I can always find new ways to train. And this is the particular reason why I chose this machine, simply because I couldn't put the weight on my back. So got myself underneath, put some weight on, and just got stuck in. The element of rehab, going to that TRX training, all of the balance, all of the proprioception with balancing on the ball and things like that. It's all stuff I don't want to do. It's all stuff nobody really wants to do. But you have to take yourself from excelling at some point and adapting and getting better every single day to all of a sudden thinking, actually, you know what, I need to regress. I need to start from the basics, start from scratch, and behave however much I want to just run around. So yeah, rehab.
To me, music is the foundation of everything. So it can take you from negative to positive. It can take you from excited to calm. It just has the power to change your mood, to enlighten you, and just change everything from creativity to anything. To me, music is more powerful than most things, and I think it's quite vital to have different aspects of music in your life as well. So yeah. Yeah, the sports that I've done have changed me into 10 times the person I would have been today, if I hadn't gotten into them. The reason how I've come around to that sort of way of thinking is because obviously when I was a lot younger, made a lot of mistakes, probably too many mistakes, got in with the wrong crowd, and obviously one of the first things I got into was your typical almost cliche football hooliganism, troublemaking. I mean, where we were brought up as well, it wasn't sort of one of the nicest places to go down to a park and have a pushabout on a swing. There was a lot of alcohol involved, a lot of trouble, a lot of hooliganism, a lot of vandalism, a lot of fights, a lot of, do you know what I mean, that rough and tumble sort of. To us, that was a standard childhood. To us, that is growing up. That is learning from them kinds of mistakes, and that is it. You grow up and you think, oh, I remember when we used to go over to the bridge and have fights with so-and-so, or we used to go have a fight down the park, or used to drink down the park, and it's sort of, to us, that was the norm. But the more I started to grow up and the more I started to realise, actually, this isn't where I want to be, or this isn't what I'm happy with, the more everything changed, so the more sports started influencing the right things. And for me, I've said before, I was absolutely shocking at football anyway, so I was trying to fit into a crowd that I didn't quite fit into, as it were, anyway. And the more I started pulling away to sports like rugby or free running, the more they started changing my mindset as a person as well. Not just that sense of belonging and actually this is what I'm supposed to be doing. It was more like the crowd that you're hanging around with were entirely different. Like rugby again is just that gentleman's game. For me personally, for other people they might have had bad experiences, but for me personally, it's just that gentleman vibe. Do you know what I mean? I was cold as a kid watching a rugby game, and I was given a hot pie when I played rugby, and I got hit hard for the first time. He pulled me up by my hand, shook my hand, and sort of patted me off and brushed it off and carried on playing a game. So for me, that changed things from a violent perspective. It was like that controlled aggression, which I hadn't before then. Prior to that, I hadn't been used to. I thought aggression was aggression and being calm was being calm, but then I realised there's a happy medium, and your controlled aggression is probably one of the best things I've learned from that. So yeah, sports has changed me massively. 100% from doing sports has changed me in my mindset, but I would say it's probably changed me more in my mindset than it has physically. But then again, swings and roundabouts, I mean, the more my mindset has grown and developed, the more I've changed physically, and vice versa. So I guess I would say mindset, but I can't say chicken or egg. I have no idea which one came first. So I think the first time I set a milestone, I was actually really disheartened, because I had this target and I was thinking, right, that's my goal, and the excitement was there all the way there up until I actually got to the goal and I've done it. And then the aftermath was like a big downhill sort of, what do I do now? As I've grown up, I've started to set realistic targets, and not just one. That's why I sort of work loads, juggle loads of things, because then I've got more targets to hit. There's so many things I want to achieve, but the main thing is just failure. I want to dive into the things that I'm scared of, just to see what happens. But not just the things I'm scared of. I'm not just jumping in front of trains and weird things like that. Like, I'm jumping in front of the things I'm passionate about, 100%. There's been tons and tons of points in my life when I've wanted to give up. My motivations to keep going, I mean, if I was to name them on my hand and give you one, the first one would obviously be my family. So to make my family proud. One of the biggest things I've done is A Bunch of Cycle Paths charity event, which basically I decided, me and my friends always used to talk, oh, we should do a big running event, or we should do a big cycle event, and it was just one of those things we always talked about week in, week out, year in, year out, and it never happened. And we sort of sat down and they were having a beer and they said it again. It just came up out of nowhere. We're like, oh, we should really do that charity event. It almost reminded me of that situation where people say, oh, we should catch up soon. You're never going to catch up soon. Like, you either do it or you don't. So I thought, well, what are we playing at? It's been a couple of years. Let's do a charity event. And it sort of, maybe it was like the beer talking, or maybe it was something else, but it sort of came to the fact where actually I thought, you know what, I'm going to start planning it. But this was a bit different for us as well, because it wasn't just a charity event. It was that physical part of it too. We were riding from Southampton all the way to Edinburgh, and none of us are cyclists. So obviously I do free running, and I'm trained to do what I want to do free running wise, but no way am I trained to ride from Southampton to Edinburgh in 5 days. And we actually made it all the way to Edinburgh in 5 days as well. And we raised about £900, just over £900 as well. So on top of everything, that was pretty special for me, and that opened up again that whole physical and mental part that I'm always chasing, pushing myself physically, pushing myself mentally, showed me that I can just give something up, start something, and even if I'm not a good cyclist, I can still achieve pretty good results from training cycling. Raising £900 to me is successful. It wasn't 10 grand, but £900 is still, for me, I achieved something more else from that as well. So help charity, train myself a little bit differently, and achieve something I never would have achieved unless we set our minds to it. So the one thing I'm proud of, I'd probably say, and this is going to sound a little bit big-headed, but I'm proud of myself because of where I've come from and where I am now today. If I hadn't started doing all of the sports and exercise that I've grown up with, I definitely wouldn't be the person I am today. Asking me the 3 most important things again today, I would tell you 3 completely different words. Obviously last night my best friend died, and yeah, my outlook again on everything has changed entirely. It's going to depend on your situation. So if you're an orphan, you're gonna crave simple things like family, a home, just that general closeness. Even if you're in prison, freedom and things like that. Everybody's going to be experiencing different things and feeling different things. And like I said, if you ask me again, my 3 most important things, I'm going to have to think hard about them, because definitely today of all days they've changed. So I don't know how you could say that I'm positive. It's just more the fact that I'm conscious and I'm aware. I have a lot of negativity inside of me. I think we all have a lot of negativity inside of us. We all have that darker part of us we want to ignore. We all have negative things happen around us. But I honestly feel that you need that negativity just so that you can take all the positivity from it. I.e., you can't get up if you're already stood up. You need to fall over to get back up. The same as you need negativity to be positive. And especially when it came to Toulouse and Lyon, there just comes this time when if you break down, who does everybody else rely on? Who does everybody look up to? And I've been the same for as long as I can remember, really. Childhood, if there's ever been any problems in a family, I've always been the one to stay retained, to stay contained. And it just gets to that point where when I'm on my own, in my own little confined bubble, that's when I'll finally feel it's acceptable to maybe break down a little bit or let myself go. But whatever I do in front of everybody else, there's just that bit of vulnerability, and they can't look up to somebody, so I like to be that person. If I was to give anybody advice, I'm usually not the person to help out with stuff like this, but from experience I would say do what you feel is right and not what you think is right, for the simple fact of the matter that if you do what you think is right, it could always be swayed by somebody else's opinion, and you can simply look back on it and just think, you know what, I regret that. If you do what you feel is right, it's your gut instinct, 100%. It's what you wanted to do, it's what you felt you should do, and you'll never regret it regardless.
Are you awake? Yeah, I'm right here. What can I ask you about today?